This is TV 10 and 55 Focus, a program dealing with issues affecting everyone on Long Island and the tri-state area. Now your host, Richard Rose.
Hi, I'm Richard Rose, and welcome to Focus. It is our pleasure today to have as our guest Sean Walter, re-elected as Riverhead Town Supervisor, Republican. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you, Richard.
And also joining us today as my co-host is Paul Tonna. Many people will remember him as the former Suffolk County Presiding Officer. He has other titles as well. Vice Chair of the Long Island Regional Economic Council, and I'm sure you could name a few more for us.
A few, but it keeps me busy.
That's right. And usually it's our tradition that a co-host asks the first question. So, Paul, it's all yours.
Sean, what a pleasure to be here with you. And you just won re-election, so, you know, when you're out on the campaign trail, you're making promises to the people of Riverhead. So day one in your new re-election, come January 1st or 2nd when you're sworn in, tell me, what do you want to get done?
Well, I'll tell you, we ran on a campaign, almost the exact same campaign as we did 2 years ago, and there were three goals. It was to develop EPCAL, subdivide EPCAL, do the environmental studies that we're doing with our mutual friend Terry Elkowitz is spearheading that for us. I am bound and determined to bring Main Street back. In Riverhead. 5 million cars come to Tanger a year, 500,000 cars go to Atlantis. It is inconceivable to me that Main Street is not bustling like your hometown of Huntington. And so that is going to happen. And the town, we are on the way to being financially stable. We took over a town with a huge deficit. We cut it in half. And unfortunately, there were layoffs of 13 employees. But we're on the right track, and as proof of that, we just sold $22 million worth of bonds, and we got 3% interest. And this is debt that was acquired by the town in 08, 09, and we came into this debt. I had no idea that it existed, right. And I think people may not have realized the gravity of the situation, but we were running really low on cash because we were borrowing against all these different funds. Right. But, you know, so we're going to continue those three things. And my goal, I don't know that it'll happen, but my goal is to wrap up Main Street in the next 2 years and bring a movie theater.
Oh, that would be great. I love the movies.
Yeah, everybody does. You know, you had a pretty convincing win on Election Day. Were you surprised by that? Did you expect a tougher race? Do you see it as a mandate?
You know, a lot of people tell me it's a mandate. I'm going to be honest with you. The only mandate I receive is to follow the Lord, and I know this is not a religious program, but I'm hoping that I'm doing what He is asking me to do in the way that I'm supposed to be doing it. If you asked me 2 or 3 days before the election, I would have said, yeah, I think we'd win by 10, 12%. You know, some people had it pegged around 20%, but you know, a 27-point victory was huge.
In Riverhead, especially.
It's very comforting to know that the residents of the town had the faith in me and my administration to bring us back in that way. So the scary part about that is it's very big shoes to fill. In other words, people, when they bring you in with that margin, they expect big things. So I'm hoping that we continue.
Well, and of course, big things have been promised in Riverhead for a long time. There's probably not as many places that have had as many grand visions as have been talked about, promised, and discussed, and many of them ended up, you know, truthfully, in the graveyard, right?
Absolutely.
And you have been very candid about that, and you've even come in and scrapped some previous attempts to try and create some of these grand designs. And where does that stand now? At one point you said, let's start over and rezone this and get a study on it and get a real plan. Where does that stand?
Well, EPCAL is really the focus. EPCAL, or the former Grumman property, I had the occasion yesterday. I don't want to say I had a few extra minutes, but I stopped in at the Grumman Memorial and I was looking around, and then I drove through EPCAL. It was very saddening to see where we were and what that place has turned into. So the goal is to finally do something that makes sense. These ski mountain proposals, these housing proposals, they don't make economic sense. The property was never subdivided. We've never done the environmental analysis that the DEC required us to do. we've never done a generic environmental impact statement on the subdivisions, and everything that the DEC has asked us to do and the county health department we are now doing. And I'm heartened to say that RKG, we hired a firm to do a market analysis. We're going to amend the zoning pursuant to that market analysis. Terry Elkowitz is doing the subdivision, the environmental work. We are going to position ourselves to be, when the next round of funding comes around from the Governor's Regional Economic Development Council, my goal is that we are the #1 shovel-ready project on the East End, because it was given to the town of Riverhead as an economic development engine for the East End,
Right.
not just for Riverhead. And my goal, even though the voters of Riverhead put me in there, my goal is to fulfill what the federal government had in mind for this town, and we will do that. That's
great. That's wonderful. The politics can get pretty rough and tumbled sometimes, and you've been at this for a long period of time. We have a new county executive, Steve Bellone, and he's a Democrat. You're a Republican. So, how do you intend to work with him? I love him. I love Steve Bellone, and this is my Steve Bellone story. When I got elected, a lot of people were well wishes. They sent cards and different things. Steve Bellone called me, and he said, "Hey, I'm the supervisor of Babylon. If you need any help," and he didn't just call me. He called me, and then I called him back, and we played telephone tag. But he made a point to reach out to me, to talk to me, to say, "Hey, it's not so bad. There's a lot of us out there that can help you if you need the help." And in that 5 minutes of a conversation, I learned a lot about that man. And I know we're from different sides of the aisle. The Republicans supported Angie Carpenter, Democrats Steve Bellone. But for the 6 months that the election is run, we can be partisan. For the next 2 years of my term, or 18 months till I run again, there's no partisanship. You have to do what is right for the county and what is right for the towns. And I'm committed to work with him.
What do you need from the county that maybe hasn't been what you've been wanting for the last few years? Anything, an improvement anywhere that you need?
Well, I don't want to say an improvement from the county. Certainly the unfunded mandates, like the out-of-county tuition mandate that came down to the towns, needs to be rolled back. It's inconceivable to me that the county is now shifting tax burden to the residents of the various towns. I think Steve Bellone, as a former town supervisor, recognizes that that's not what should be done. I think with the help of Ed Romaine and some of the other county legislators, there'll be an amendment to the charter that will not allow the county to do this again. Steve comes from a place where he knows what we face as supervisors, and hopefully he works that way.
Would you favor, some have suggested ending the practice in the first place to allow county residents to go out of county and expect anyone to pick up the difference in the tab? Because that's what community colleges were supposed to be for in the first place, is that you'd have some place locally for your residents to go to.
That's not for me. That's a state, I think that's a state issue. That's not for a town supervisor to determine. Certainly, I don't think that the towns should have to pay the out-of-county tuition. It's worse for people, supervisors like Frank Petrone or whoever the Babylon supervisor is, because there's a lot of people that probably go to Nassau Community College.
That's right.
Quite frankly, on the East End, for people like Scott Russell and myself, even though we did have to pass along a $130,000 tax increase on the Riverhead portion of the tax bill, it probably is less. That $130,000 is probably less amortized over the whole county than it would be if it were just taken out of the county pot. But it's not something that should have been done.
All right, well, we have to take a break, but we're here with Sean Walter, Riverhead Town Supervisor, and Paul Tonna, former Suffolk County Presiding Officer. We have a lot more to talk about. Stay right there.
TV 10 and 55 Focus now continues.
And welcome back. I'm Richard Rose. We're here with our guest, Sean Walter, re-elected Riverhead Town Supervisor, and my co-host, Paul Tonna. And let me ask you, there have been some recent successes of economic renewal in Riverhead, including Summerwind Square. We have some video we can show. What is this new project for downtown Riverhead?
Summerwind Square is a new affordable housing project with commercial. I think it's about 8,000 square feet of commercial on the bottom floor. That's going to be a restaurant and other commercial establishments. And then I think it's 52 affordable housing units that it's available. The applications are available through the Long Island Housing Partnership. It's a beautiful, just a beautiful concept. It's similar to some of the stuff that's been done in Patchogue with great success, and it's going to generate a tremendous amount of foot traffic. My hat's off to Ray Dickhoff, Jody Giglio, and Marty Sinlewski are the three principals in this, and it's a transformative project for Riverhead. And that's what it was. You're looking at the video of the building that got torn down. And I will mention, as I said to you earlier, that my favorite part of 2011 is they let me operate the backhoe for about 15 minutes taking down a wall. That's good.
No other buildings came down, though.
Right.
I didn't knock anything else down.
Luckily.
But, aren't you a proponent of this Main Street development approach that has been underway even at the Long Island Regional Planning Council, has tried to guide it, the idea of driving development to downtowns? Are you a proponent of that?
Absolutely. The smart growth principles, the fact that a lot of our downtowns are aging and decaying. When you come to a town like Riverhead, we've got sewer, we've got water, we've got the smart growth principles of zoning. So that, really now it's just the push to find the businesses. And with help of, like I sit with Paul on the Regional Economic Development Council, those are the areas where we can really act as, I don't want to say it, it's not really a bully pulpit, Paul. Maybe you could.
Yeah, but you're an advocate. But I think it's pretty interesting when you think about, he's a supervisor who's been in for a short period of time and has done a bang-up job in Riverhead, but already is now serving, we serve together on the Long Island Regional Plan Council, and he's involved not just in looking at his town, but also looking at Long Island as a region, not just Nassau, not just Suffolk. And I think it was a good appointment. We've benefited from your insight, your experience, so that when you're coming up with large regional plans, we have a 2035 plan that's just been minted, and Sean has played a very, very active role in that. So in a very short period of time, hitting the ground running, building competency in areas. I know, Sean, when I entered elected office, it took me quite some time to realize I was on a county level, but you're not an expert in policing. I'm not an expert in the health departments and social services and land use and sewers. So, you have a reputation of picking up some of this stuff pretty quickly. So, what motivates you? How did that take place?
My father had me in politics at an early age. I think in the late 70s he ran for Suffolk County Legislature.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Luckily he didn't win from a family standpoint. I think my mother would have had his head. But I was stuffing envelopes and hanging things on mailboxes and going to different Conservative Party events from in my earliest formative years. And that carried over, and I'm an attorney by trade, and I worked in the town attorney's office in Riverhead for 6 years prior to being the town supervisor. I left in 2006, and then I came in as supervisor in 2010, so I had a 4-year hiatus. But that gave me a little bit of not an edge, but the insight as to how town government functions. And so I appreciate those kind words, and I've only been on the Regional Planning Council for a short period of time, so thank you very much.
Yeah, but you've made quite an impact, and I think it speaks to the strength of a council like that when you have somebody like Sean and Supervisor John Kamen in Nassau County. It helps to have people.
Well, and it certainly has been a plus that Long Island did so well in the first round here now with Governor Cuomo coming in with nearly $102 million, and there's a whole list of projects that are going to get some money from the state to boost economic development and to get some projects going. The Ronkonkoma Hub, the Heartland Square development, and then there are some people still sitting on the outside, like people in Nassau Hub, because they're not quite ready to present their project, and someone like yourself in Riverhead, where you have been working on this, proposals in the Calverton area, EPCAL. Where do you feel you'll be at when the next round occurs? Do you feel like the project will or be ready to go, or what else you have to do to persuade them to include you in the next round of funding?
My goal is to be #1 in the next round of funding, and whether that happens or not remains to be seen. But you know, here's the point: the regional approach. We have to, as a town, take the regional approach. On the Planning Council, we take the regional approach, and I think when people see the subdivision that we're laying out. One of the most amazing things that we're going to try to work on, and if I can get this through the state legislature with the help of Senator Ken Laval and Dan LaSquadro, the entire state will benefit from it. We're talking about creating a regional permitting commission for EPCAL that will probably be a 9-member board with appointees from the governor's office, the county executive's office, and the town of Riverhead. And we're going to try to get umbrella permits from the DEC, the health department, the town of Riverhead for all the development that's being studied in EPCAL. And when you have that permit, you know, we have to set the legislation to allow, and in some cases maybe help persuade the DEC to give the regional permit. But when you have this legislation in place, similar to the way the Pine Barrens Commission operates, we will operate, you're going to be able to come into EPCAL and get approval for projects that meet the plan within 75 days. We need, that is the regional,
well, you need
that.
You need something to have developers say, look, we don't want to spend 5 years at a process, right?
That's right.
We need to come in and we need to know that we have, you know, we have the security to come in and make an investment. That's wonderful.
Well, and there's a lot else that's involved in what Riverhead's hoping to also get a piece of what's happening at Brookhaven National Lab. And we'll have to take a break right now, but when we come back, let's talk about that, because Brookhaven Lab, right across the border, is getting a huge influx of money from the federal government. How can Riverhead benefit from that or tie into that? Well, the supervisor will let you know when we come back. Stay with us.
TV 10 and 55 Focus continues.
Hey, welcome back. We're here with Sean Walter and Paul Tonna. And Supervisor Walter, talk a little bit for the audience about what you would hope to tie into with Brookhaven National Lab.
You know, it's interesting that you say that, because we've been trying to reinvent the wheel in Riverhead for 12 years with EPCAL. And you only have to look at success stories at Brookhaven National Lab, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, the success that Senator Laval started with the incubator at Stony Brook Incubator and Stony Brook University. The wealth of information and technology coming out of those 3 institutions is awe-inspiring. And how we as a town didn't say, wait a minute, we really should tap into that, because when businesses are generated at Brookhaven, they can't stay there. When an idea or a concept is generated at Cold Spring Laboratories, they can't stay there. They need to find a place to go. Well, in most cases, they're going to go to a commercial industrial park. It's a lot easier to go to a commercial industrial park where the government owns the property. So the point is, we're not going to reinvent the wheel on these things. We are going to tie in. I've had somewhat regular meetings with Dr. Aronson, and I called him yesterday to set up another meeting. I'm keeping him apprised of what's going on at EPCAL. I know that they've been out to visit it, and he keeps me apprised of what's going on.
Well, it's all under the supervision of Stony Brook and you know, Cold Spring Lab, and also Brookhaven working together. And these innovations that come out of there, the inventions, the discoveries, and there are many applications that have potential in the marketplace, and that means people getting hired. You know, these are incubator industries. And I guess part of what I've understood from your idea is that you figure there's going to be a spillover if this really takes off as hoped. And, you know, EPCAL will be a great place for people to set up shop, right?
Absolutely. We're going to capture that spillover.
And your downtown areas. I mean, when you think about it, these are young scientists. These are people who are providing thought leadership. If you have a vibrant downtown with a nice movie theater and some innovative housing, which you
like that movie
put together, oh, absolutely. Maybe a couple of coffee shops and a couple of things, you know. I think it'll be a very nice place, designated place to go. So that'd be great. You know, Sean, I wanted to ask you, I know we've had many conversations, some private, some public, about the importance of faith. And you were very clear to me that you have a religious imagination, that it's not just, it's not just about public service, but public service with the understanding that it's a place where you could live out your faith. And that's very, very appealing to me. And so maybe just to articulate a little, where does faith and public service and, where do they connect and join with you?
It's very interesting you say that. When I started this journey, I said to Marty Keller, who was the Republican town leader at the time, I said, attorneys, guys like me, we have big egos. But I think that I'm being called to run for town supervisor. But I can't tell you, Marty, and Marty has a very strong faith. He's a convert to the Catholic faith from the Jewish faith. And his wife was I think she was a former Carmelite nun, so they have a very strong faith. So I said, Marty, I'm going to leave it to you. You have to help me to discern whether this is my ego telling me to run for town supervisor, or is this what I'm being called to do? And he did that for me. And the way I look at it, and I've said this 100 times, by the grace of God, I got elected. By His grace, I won't be in town hall. And it's when you sit and listen to the deepness of your heart is when God talks to you. And people, sometimes they don't pay attention to that, and I understand that. And some people get uncomfortable when I speak like this. But when you sit and listen to the deepest recesses of your heart of what you're supposed to be doing, He will call to you. And it's difficult, as I said, to discern what it is you're being called to do, because there are a lot of outside influences. So I'm not saying it's a calling like to be a priest or a nun or a pastor in a church. It's not the same thing, but God guided me to this. And it's still a difficult walk, because I have to tell you, I'm a sinner with the rest of them, and I have a group of men, pastors. There's only 2 Catholics in the group. The rest are all Christian pastors and a Lutheran pastor. And we meet on Thursday mornings at 8 o'clock in my office, and we pray together. We pray for the town. And without that group of men, I couldn't do this job. Without that faith in God, I couldn't do this job. I cannot. It's very hard for me to imagine how somebody goes through life without faith, because when you don't have it, I don't know what you rely on.
Well, I'm glad it's always a struggle. I've always found when you see the face of the poor and the public services, there you're supposed to take care of the weak, the disadvantaged and stuff. I always thought that was a great nexus point, to be able to say what you do here really translates into how we help those who are vulnerable and need to be lifted while we're climbing.
Well, it certainly can be traced back in all the roots of public service, people's faith in wanting to serve others. So you rely on that when you are making difficult decisions?
Absolutely.
That's great.
Absolutely. You don't leave your faith or your morals or your principles at the door. Or your conservative or liberalism. You draw from these things. And faith is one of the biggest things I draw from.
Even when people don't agree with you, right? Or they have a point of view
the most.
That's when you need it the most.
And it happens from time to time, obviously. Nobody's perfect. And I make poor choices from time to time. And, faith sometimes helps you realize you make these poor choices, and you go back and circle back and take responsibility.
Well, one of us has been trying to figure out who should ask about.
Yeah, so I have to ask you,
right?
Sean, those boots. I've seen you with the boots. I mean,
Can we see the boots? I think you can
you got to
tell us.
focus in on these boots. They're beautiful.
Those are nice
so
cowboy boots.
Tell me about the boots.
And we got a minute.
I tell
Not
people
even.
I'm the Bible-thumping Christian Coalition cowboy boot-wearing supervisor. I don't know. I listen to country music. I love country music. I love tube socks, and wearing nice boots allows you to wear tube socks all the time.
And you got a cowboy hat to go?
I don't wear a cowboy hat because I'm afraid, and this is really just, I think
we
that
have
it
just, 20
causes
seconds.
male pattern baldness.
All right.
I didn't wear a cowboy hat, but it happened anyway.
We'll have to leave it at that. But thanks for joining us so much. Sean
God.
Walter, re-elected
Thank you.
Riverhead Town Supervisor. Paul Tonna, my
Thank you.
co-host today.
I
And thank you
appreciate
for
it.
being
What an
there.
opportunity.
Yes. I'm Richard Rose. Be sure to join us next week for yet another edition of Focus.